Should you, assuming that you are retiring at 62 or earlier, draw money from your retirement accounts down to increase Social Security? My name is Daniel, founder of McCluskey Financial, and out of the almost 90,000 that saw this video on filing early, this was a popular topic. So today we're going to take a look at, first, why looking at just the break-even point is fallacious, which is very common. Second, how when we take Social Security could affect our portfolio balance based on different rates of return. And third, even if it does increase our actual projected portfolio balance, what does that do to the probability of success of our retirement? Let's get into it. So here we have an example profile of a 61-year-old male, not a real situation, has around $800,000 in an IRA and is wondering if he should push Social Security back and draw from this first to increase his Social Security benefits. That's why we have the retirement at age 62, 1 year from today. Retirement expenses, roughly $3,000 a month, on top of healthcare costs and planning for 3 years of long-term care costs at $50,000. Of course, that's in today's dollars, so it would be adjusted for inflation. And the projected Social Security amounts, if you took it at 62, is $23.10. At 70 is $39.33. However, both of those are in today's dollars. They will be inflating over time with the cost of living adjustment. So in this example profile, or really with any situation, this is why often there's a big mistake made when looking at the quote-unquote break-even point. So usually what people do is they'll say, all right, if I take it as early as possible, this light blue line here, and then if I delayed it out and took it at age 70, this dark blue line, we see the break-even point in terms of how much money we've received from the Social Security Administration is about 78 years old, and they decide, hey, is my life expectancy lower than 78? Well, then I'll take it early. If it's more than 78, well, then I'll go ahead and delay it. The problem is there's so many factors this doesn't take into consideration. And while there are plenty of them, I'm just gonna look at the main one here. And that is that money is far more valuable today than it is tomorrow. A way to represent this numerically is essentially to say, what if I took it at 62, invested this money, it was earning a certain rate of return, and I did the same thing when I took it at age 70, then what would be the break-even point in terms of future dollars after that money has grown at whatever rate of return you choose? We chose 5%. The cost of living adjustment, we chose flat every single year at 2.85%. The 5% also, regardless of if you took it at age 62 or 70. And at 78, which is usually the quote-unquote break-even point, you would have around $900,000 that would, of course, be continuing to grow if you took it at age 62. And if you took it at age 70, you'd have around $750,000. Of course, that's not to say that 70 isn't still going to pass age 62 at some point, but because the value of a dollar is more valuable today than it is tomorrow, unless we have some sort of deflation, this is a better way to look at the quote-unquote break-even point. So now you understand that the quote-unquote break-even point is a little bit different than just looking at when you hit the exact same amount of dollars. Lots of more factors to take into account, like lifespan, like adjusting the money for inflation, like adjusting the money if you were taking it out and investing it at some sort of rate of return. Also, what happens if you're investing it and that money goes down? Then it would maybe make more sense to wait and take it till 70. So many factors, but with that in mind, what happens if you take it earlier and allow the portfolio to grow? So basically, you're putting less demand on the portfolio in those early 8 years, so from 62 to 70. If you're taking Social Security, then you're taking less from your portfolio. If you wait to take Social Security, then you're taking more from your portfolio, at least in this person's case. That doesn't have to be the case across the board. In that case, if you are assuming a very standard 60% stocks, 40% bond portfolio, again, none of this is guaranteed, just looking at examples, we have, at age 90, approximately $93.6 thousand less to leave behind to our heirs if we took it at age 70. Also, if we go to age, say, 75 here, if you were to pass away at 75, even though we're pretty close to the break-even point, there's about a $300,000 difference there that gets left to heirs. Let's go even past the break-even point to, say, 80. Still close to $300,000 more in your portfolio. Now, there's also factors like the spousal benefit or the survivor benefit. So this is just this one person's example. We went with a 61-year-old male, single, not concerned about the survivor benefit. That is different for many people. Now, that was a moderate 60-40. If you went much more conservatively with 20% stocks and 80% bonds, at the age of 90, you actually leave behind approximately, again, not guaranteed, according to the software, $193.8 thousand more by taking it at age 70. However, if you pass away before age 90, most of the time you actually are still leaving more behind if you were to take it earlier. So you would leave less behind if you took it at age 70 and you passed away before whenever that break-even point is. I don't have a chart on here, but I want to say it's between 80 and 85. Lastly, if you went with a much more aggressive portfolio, so 80% stocks, 20% bonds, again, none of this is guaranteed. This is just the software. We see 272.7 thousand approximately less being left behind if you deferred it out until age 70. So kind of the quote-unquote rule of thumb, which again is not the same every single time, is the stronger the return on the portfolio, the better it is to take the money earlier, put less demand on the portfolio, because of course if it's returning higher, you want that to return, you can end up leaving more behind. Hey, and real quick, if you're finding this video helpful, leave a like and let me know. Now third, even if the break-even point calculation is a little bit flawed, and I might potentially leave more money behind by taking it earlier as opposed to later, how does that actually affect our quote-unquote probability of success of being able to maintain that same level of income adjusted for inflation across our retirement, not assuming any sort of retirement spending smile or some guardrails withdrawal or anything like that? If that's the case, we see taking it at age 70 actually is about 5% higher than taking it at age 62, again, assuming just that 60-40 there. But of course, none of this is guaranteed. This is this specific hypothetical person's situation. The difference between 94 and 99% wasn't that big of a deal. But if it's the difference between 70 and 85, this might be something to take into account. So should you draw down your IRA or your retirement account to increase your Social Security? Of course, the unsatisfying answer is it depends. There's so many different things with the current state of Social Security we're all aware of, currently set to deplete by 2035 if changes are not made. Different changes that could be made are to either cut benefits, number one, or to raise revenues. One of those two essentially has to happen. Tom Margenow, the author of Social Security Simple and Smart, says it's probably not a matter of wondering if Social Security is going to be there when you retire, but rather a matter of wondering how it's going to be different, as they're very likely to make lots of changes. If you're within 10 years of retirement in the US, subscribe. I release videos for you twice a week on how to do that peacefully.